The stone is warm beside you, even as the water holds a coolness that seems to rise from somewhere deeper than the afternoon. You are sitting near the edge of an OMAN Wadi pool, where the mountains lean inward, and the light settles softly on the surface like a thin sheet of gold. The water is almost still, except where a tiny current moves through it, carrying the faint shimmer of the canyon walls into a slow, wavering green. Above you, the sky is a quiet ribbon between high stone shoulders, blue and pale and far away, as if the earth has opened just enough to let light fall in. The rock around the pool is worn smooth by seasons of water, by rare rains, by long years of patient flow, and by the soft turning of sand against limestone and ancient mountain stone. Nothing here feels hurried, because the wadi has been shaping itself for a very long time. One pool, one bend, one polished ledge at a time. You can feel the difference between the heat held in the rock and the coolness waiting just below the water's skin. When your fingers move through the pool, small circles drift outward and touch the reflected cliffs, breaking them into loose pieces of ochre, cream, grey, and shadow. Then the surface gathers itself again, as if the pool has been practicing stillness for centuries and knows how to return to it. The wadi is not empty, though at first it may seem almost silent, because its life is small, patient, and tucked into edges. A dragonfly pauses over the water and hovers there with glassy wings, its body catching a brief spark of light before it moves toward the reeds. Tiny fish hold themselves in the shallows, facing the current, making almost no movement at all, except the faint trembling that keeps them balanced in the clear, mineral-bright water. Around the pool, the canyon walls carry the memory of the mountains that rose here over immense stretches of time. Oman's northern ranges were lifted and folded through deep geological pressure, and in places the rocks remember old seas, old ocean floors, and the slow joining of Earth's inner layers. The wadi pools are part of that memory, because water has found the softer seams, followed them downward, and carved calm basins where sunlight can rest. You are not moving quickly, and there is no need to decide where to go next. The path beside the pool is pale with dust, marked by rounded stones and the occasional root of an acacia reaching toward hidden moisture. In the shade, the air feels cooler, and the scent of wet rock rises gently, carrying a faint mineral sweetness that belongs only to places where water appears like a quiet gift. The pool deepens near the far wall, where the canyon shadow turns the water from green to blue-green, then to a soft darkness that does not feel closed. It feels sheltered, like a room made by stone and time, where the outside world has become distant enough to lose its sharp edges. You can look down and see the pale shapes of submerged rocks beneath you, blurred by reflection, softened by depth, and arranged as if placed there by a slow, dreaming hand. In Oman, wadis can lie dry for long parts of the year, their beds open to the sun, their stones heated by day and cooled by desert night. Then, when rain comes to the mountains, water gathers in channels and moves through the old courses, filling pools, refreshing springs, and smoothing the narrow passages again. The landscape does not need constant water to be alive. It needs rhythm, and here that rhythm is seasonal, spacious, and ancient. You can imagine the rain falling far upstream, not as a storm inside this moment, but as a distant memory held by the rocks. It touches high slopes, gathers in hollows, slips through gravel, and begins the long conversation between mountain and valley. By the time it reaches a pool like this, it has already traveled through stone and silence, and it arrives clear enough to hold the sky. The light changes slowly as the sun leans away from the wadi walls, leaving one side bright and one side quietly blue. The bright side glows with the colors of Oman's mountain stone, with warm beige ledges, grey folds, and amber edges where the rock has fractured cleanly. The shaded side grows cooler, and the pool seems to deepen in thought, as if every reflection has become more careful and more soft. You are close enough to hear the smallest sounds, which are not loud, but they gather meaning because there are so few of them. A drop falls from a wet crease in the rock, touches the pool, and sends a ring outward until it disappears against the opposite wall. Somewhere in the palms, a bird adjusts itself among the leaves, and the fronds answer with a dry, delicate whisper. Date palms grow where people have long understood the value of water, but here the trees still feel like part of the wadi's natural breathing. Their roots follow moisture, their fronds cast broken shade, and their trunks lean slightly, as though listening to the valley. Beyond them, smaller shrubs find narrow pockets of soil, and wild grasses soften the margins where stone, silt, and water meet. The geology around you is both solid and flowing, even though only the water seems to move. Limestone can dissolve slowly under the touch of water, opening cracks, widening channels, and shaping pockets where pools can gather after rain. Other rocks in Oman's mountains, including pieces of ancient oceanic crust lifted high above the sea, give the land a strange and beautiful depth, as if the wadi is holding two worlds at once. There is something comforting about a landscape that reveals its history so quietly. The stone does not explain itself all at once, and the pool does not ask to be understood quickly. You are allowed to notice only the curve of a ledge, the cool shade beneath an overhang, and the way a small fish vanishes into reflection, leaving behind only a faint flicker. As you sit near the water, your breathing begins to match the slowness of the place, and each breath feels as though it belongs here. The air passes over warm stone, through canyon shade, across the pool's cool surface, and into you with a softness that makes the body loosen. The wadi seems to hold the kind of quiet that does not press down but opens around you, broad and tender and unhurried. The pool has layers not only of depth, but of light. At the surface, it carries the sky, pale and moving, while just below, it holds the green of algae, the grey of submerged stone, and the quiet brown of leaves that have settled on the bottom. Deeper still, where the wall leans over the water, the color becomes shadow, and the shadow feels less like absence than rest. If you move along the bank, the stones underfoot are rounded and smooth, each one shaped by water that may only pass this way in certain seasons. They are not polished like glass, but softened at the edges, made gentle by contact and time. Some are pale as bone, some rust-colored, some dark with moisture, and together they make a quiet mosaic beneath your slow steps. A narrow channel leads from one pool to another, and the water slips through it with a low, silvery murmur. It is not a river in the wide sense, not a rushing line across a map, but a chain of small resting places held between rock walls. Each pool seems to pause before becoming the next, and each pause gives the wadi its voice, low and clear and nearly hidden. You follow the sound for a little while, not because you need to arrive somewhere, but because the wadi invites this kind of gentle wandering. The path bends around boulders, rises over smooth stone shelves, then dips again toward a basin where the water is brighter. Sunlight has found this place directly, and the pool shines with a pale turquoise glow, lit from above and reflected from below. The color is not artificial, and it is not ornamental. It comes from depth, mineral, shade, and sky meeting inside clear water. In shallow places, the pool is nearly transparent, and every pebble is visible, trembling slightly beneath the moving surface. Where the water deepens, the blue gathers softly, and the mind follows it downward into a quieter blue. Around the edges, the ecosystem is small but complete, shaped by heat, scarcity, shade, and the dependable return of water. Algae form fine green films on submerged stones, creating food for tiny grazers that move almost invisibly across the surfaces. Insects skim and pause, fish shelter in the clear shallows, and plants draw moisture from cracks where the stone seems at first glance too hard to hold life. This is the gentleness of wadis, that they reveal abundance without excess. A thin thread of water can support leaves, wings, roots, and reflections, while also cooling the air enough to change the feeling of an entire canyon. You sense that nothing here is wasted, and that every narrow strip of shade, every seep, every quiet pool is part of a larger patience. The walls rise higher in some places, and the wadi narrows, making the sky smaller and the air more hushed. Your footsteps seem to soften automatically, as if the canyon is a room where stone has been listening for a long time. There are pale lines on the walls where water once stood higher, and there are smooth hollows that show how the current has turned sand in circles, carving bowls slowly into the rock. These carved bowls are like small records of motion, because water is light to the touch but faithful in repetition. A single passing current may seem too gentle to change anything, yet over many seasons it rounds stone, deepens channels, and leaves behind forms that look almost intentional. The Wadi teaches that softness can shape hardness not by force, but by returning. You pause beside one of these hollows and look into the water collected there, clear enough to hold a small piece of sky. A leaf rests on the surface, turning once, then drifting toward the side where the current becomes too faint to measure. Beneath it, tiny particles of sand move in a slow circle, tracing the hidden pattern of water that continues even when the pool appears still. The heat beyond the canyon is softened here, and the shade seems to have a texture of its own. It touches your face, rests on your shoulders, and gathers beneath the ledges where the rock holds the night a little longer into the day. In these shaded places, ferns and small green plants sometimes appear, delicate against the stone, their leaves making the wadi feel unexpectedly tender. Oman's wadis are often described through their beauty, but their quiet science is just as calming. They are drainage paths, seasonal waterways, groundwater windows, and living corridors that connect mountain slopes to lower valleys. Their pools can be fed by springs, rainwater trapped in stone basins, or water moving slowly through gravel beneath the surface, unseen until the land opens enough to reveal it. You can think of the wadi as a kind of breathing place for the mountain. Rain enters, stone holds, shade protects, and water appears where the shape of the valley allows it to gather. Then the dry months return, and the surface may shrink. But even then, moisture can remain below, resting in hidden layers where roots and stones continue their quiet conversation. A small fish turns near your feet, catching the light along its side, then becomes nearly invisible against the pale bottom. It lives in a world of reflections, where the sky moves above and the rocks move below, though neither truly moves at all. To the fish, the pool is not a scenic place, but a whole landscape of shade, current, food, shelter, and signals too subtle for you to read. You watch without needing to understand everything, and that is part of the peace of it. The wadi does not become less beautiful because it keeps some of itself hidden. If anything, the unseen water under the gravel, the roots in the cracks, and the slow chemistry inside the stone make the visible pool feel more alive. As you drift farther along the wadi, the sound of the larger world falls away until only the local sounds remain. Water touches stone, wind passes through palm leaves, and now and then a small pebble shifts under your step with a dry, rounded click. The canyon holds these sounds close, not echoing them sharply, but returning them softly, as if every noise is being wrapped in dust and shade. The rock faces are not uniform. They carry seams, folds, stains, and ledges that reveal long histories of pressure and erosion. Some surfaces are smooth where water has polished them, while others are fractured and pale, with small shadows tucked into each crack. Iron minerals may leave warm reddish tones, while limestone and other pale stones catch the sun in soft bands, creating a quiet pattern that changes as the light moves. You can sit again where a ledge slopes down into the pool, letting your hand rest against stone warmed by daylight. The contrast is simple and soothing: warm rock beneath your palm, cool water around your fingers, and slow air moving along the canyon. This is a place made of balances between dryness and water, brightness and shadow, height and depth, and between the long memory of geology and the brief passing of an afternoon. There is no need to rush past the surface of things, because the surface itself is full of detail. Tiny ripples bend the reflected walls into long ribbons, so the canyon seems to flow downward into the pool, while the real canyon stands completely still. When a breeze arrives, the reflection loosens and reforms, as if the water is dreaming the shape of the stone over and over again. In the warm months, the shaded pools become especially precious to the living things around them, but even this importance feels quiet rather than tense. Birds visit, insects gather, and plants hold their green close to the water's edge, where the canyon offers enough moisture for leaves to remain. The ecosystem is not loud with abundance, but careful with it, arranging life in small, durable gestures. Somewhere upstream, the wadi may pass through a narrower cleft where the walls draw close and the water deepens into a secret-looking channel. Light enters from above, touches one side, and leaves the other in a blue-grey hush that seems cooler than the air itself. In such places, the pool becomes a corridor of shade, inviting the eye to move slowly along its length. The deeper sections of a wadi pool can feel almost like a desert mirror turned inward. Instead of reflecting a wide sky, they reflect stone, shadow, and thin leaves, so the world above becomes intimate and close. You may see the cliff upside down beneath you wavering gently, and for a moment it feels as though there are two canyons, one rising into air and one descending into water. This doubling is part of the wadi's quiet magic, though nothing supernatural is needed. Light enters the water, bends, scatters, reflects, and returns, carrying color from minerals, sky, algae, and depth. The mind receives it as beauty, while the body receives the coolness, and together they make a calm that feels almost weightless. A dragonfly returns, or perhaps it is another one, moving along the pool's edge with a precision that seems effortless. Its wings are nearly invisible until they catch sunlight, and then they flash like clear glass for the length of a breath. It lands on a reed, rests there, and becomes part of the still picture, a small life balanced between water and air. The reeds themselves bend only slightly, because the breeze inside the canyon is soft. Their stems gather near the margin where silt has settled, where the water is shallow enough for roots and quiet enough for fine particles to remain. Around them, the pool holds small floating leaves, pale dust, and the faint trails of insects, each one marking the surface before vanishing into smoothness. You begin to sense how the wadi is a landscape of thresholds. There is the threshold between mountain and valley, between dry stone and clear water, between open sun and shaded gorge, between what can be seen and what is held underground. Each threshold is gentle, and none of them asks you to choose quickly, because here the world changes by degrees. Far above, the ridgelines may be bare and bright, their slopes shaped by heat, gravity, and the patient movement of weathered rock. Down here, in the channel, the same mountains feel close and protective, guiding water along paths that were made through persistence rather than haste. The wadi is the mountain's softer interior, the place where stone has allowed water to write upon it. When you look closely at the wall beside the pool, you can see small pockets and ledges where minerals have left delicate stains. Some look like faint brushstrokes, some like old smoke, and some like thin honey-colored lines descending from cracks. They mark the slow passage of moisture, the evaporation of water, and the minerals left behind as the canyon dries and fills and dries again. Nothing here is separate from time, but time does not feel heavy in this place. It feels spread out, like light across the pool, or like a long breath moving through the valley. You are not being asked to measure it, only to rest inside it, while the wadi continues its old work of holding, releasing, polishing, and remembering. The water near your ankles is clear enough to reveal the smallest shadows, and when you move, the shadows move with you. A line of sunlight trembles over your skin, broken by ripples, and the pattern travels up the stone as if the pool is quietly illuminating the canyon from below. It is a soft kind of brightness, less like noon, and more like the inside of a shell. In places where the pool narrows, the current becomes visible not through speed, but through texture. The surface tightens slightly, then loosens again, carrying tiny bubbles and floating grains through a passage no wider than a step. The water is always going somewhere, though so slowly here that its movement feels like thought rather than travel. You follow it with your eyes as it slips into another basin where the walls lower and the sky opens a little wider. Here the pool is warmer at the edges and the stones are coated with a soft green trace that speaks of sunlight, minerals, and patient growth. A few small fish gather near the inlet, where oxygen and food may arrive with the current, and their bodies tilt gently in place. The science of such a pool is quiet but intricate, because temperature, light, chemistry, and flow all shape who can live here. Warm, shallow edges may feed algae, shaded depths may preserve coolness, and a spring-fed seep may keep the water present long after the last rain has passed. Each condition is modest on its own, but together they create a small world. You do not need to name every species to feel the presence of life. There is life in the quick line of a water strider, in the fine trembling of a reed, in the green film on a stone, and in the unseen roots following moisture through gravel. The Wadi's living community is quiet enough to be missed by a hurried eye, but when you slow down, it begins to appear everywhere. The mountains of Oman often hold this contrast between stark sunlit slopes and hidden corridors of water. From a distance, the land may seem dry and open, composed of rock, dust, and light, but inside the wadis there are pools where shade gathers and life concentrates. It is a reminder that landscapes keep private chambers, and that beauty sometimes waits in the folds of the earth. The pool before you holds the canyon in miniature. It carries a strip of sky, a leaning palm, a wall of stone, and your own softened outline, all mingled with the real depth below. If you look long enough, the difference between reflection and water becomes less important, because both are part of the same quiet invitation to loosen your thoughts. The air cools slightly as the sun lowers behind one high edge of rock, and the color of the wadi changes without hurry. Gold withdraws from the upper ledges first, then from the middle wall, and finally from the stones at the water's edge. What remains is a blue softness, a calm evening shade, and the pool darkening into green again. This is often when a landscape feels most ancient, not because it becomes older, but because its pace becomes easier to sense. The day has passed over it like countless days before, warming the stone, brightening the water, and then leaving both to the gentle care of dusk. You can feel the wadi settling, not into sleep exactly, but into a quieter version of waking. A faint scent rises from the damp places now, earthy and mineral, with the green note of plants that have spent the day in shade. The palms become silhouettes, their fronds layered against the fading sky, and the reeds gather into soft lines along the pool. Small insects move low over the water, tracing delicate paths through the dimming air, and the pool receives each touch without losing its calm. You remain near the edge, letting the evening arrive in slow layers. The stone no longer feels as hot beneath you, and the water seems cooler by contrast, holding the memory of shade even where sunlight was bright. In the canyon, temperature is not just a number, but a feeling that moves from surface to surface, from rock to air to skin to water. The wadi's shape makes this cooling gradual, because the walls release heat slowly after sunset. During the day, they store the sun, and in the evening they give it back in a softer form, like a low warmth held close to the ground. The pool, meanwhile, steadies the air around it, and together stone and water create a small pocket of balance. You can imagine how many evenings have settled into this same channel, long before your presence, and long after it. The pool has reflected moons you did not see, clouds that passed without names, and stars that appeared in the narrow strip of sky between stone walls. It has held fallen leaves, drifting seeds, mountain rain, and the silent shadows of animals arriving quietly to drink. In that sense, the pool is not only a place, but a gathering of moments. It gathers water from the mountain, light from the sky, minerals from the stone, and life from every edge that touches it. When you sit beside it, you become one more brief reflection, held gently for a while in its surface. The canyon deepens into blue as the last high ledges lose their fire, and the wadi becomes less detailed but more spacious. Shapes soften, colors blend, and the pool grows darker while still holding a faint brightness where the sky remains. The world is not disappearing, it is simply letting go of its outlines, the way a mind lets go before sleep. A small sound comes from the water, perhaps a fish touching the surface, perhaps a bubble released from a submerged stone. It is so slight that it seems to belong more to the silence than to sound. The ring it makes moves outward, touches the reflected wall, and vanishes into the darkening stillness. Now the wadi feels like a long, sheltered corridor of dusk, with the pools resting one after another between pale stone rooms. Each pool has its own depth, its own shade, its own small lives, yet all of them belong to the same seasonal path through the mountains. Water may be separated by ledges and gravel, but it is connected by gravity, by memory, and by the slope of the land. You could follow that path in thought, downstream through widening channels and dry beds, past acacia trees and palms, toward lower ground where the mountains release their hold. or you could follow it upstream into narrower places where springs emerge and smooth walls hold a deeper coolness. Either direction returns you to the same quiet understanding that the wadi is a thread of water through stone. The stars are not visible yet, but the sky between the canyon walls is preparing for them. It has turned from pale blue to a deeper blue, and the first softness of night has gathered above the ridges. The pool reflects this change faithfully, becoming darker than the stone, yet still carrying a faint line of light along one edge where the sky lingers. In the dimness, the details of the ecosystem become more suggested than seen. The reeds are a soft mass, the fish are quick shadows, and the insects are tiny movements that appear only when they cross the last brightness. Nothing needs to be sharp now, because the wadi's beauty has moved from detail into atmosphere. You let yourself be still enough to feel the valley around you, not as scenery, but as a presence made from stone, water, air, and time. The high walls hold the cooling day, the pool holds the fading sky, and the ground holds the long memory of water that has passed this way before. Your thoughts can settle into that memory without needing to keep their usual shape. The quiet landscape of the Omani Wadi pools is not quiet because nothing happens here. It is quiet because everything happens slowly enough to be felt as peace. Water shapes rock, light enters shade, roots follow hidden moisture, fish hold their place in the current, and the pool gathers it all into one breath. As the evening lowers, you can imagine the cool traveling through the canyon, touching each stone ledge and each small basin in turn. It moves without hurry, replacing the day's brightness with a softer clarity, the kind that lets you hear water more easily and see less sharply. The wadi seems to welcome this change, as though shade is not the absence of sun, but another form of shelter. You remain beside the pool, and the pool remains beside you, both of you held for a while in the same quiet hollow of the mountains. There is no dramatic ending to this hour, no boundary where day suddenly becomes night, only a long, gentle blending of colors and temperatures and sounds. The water darkens, the stone cools, and the wadi continues downward through the silence, carrying the last light slowly with it. And along that downward path, the pools seem to remember one another, as if each basin passes a small portion of its coolness into the next. The water slips beneath stones, appears again in a shallow runnel, and gathers where the canyon floor dips into a smoother hollow. You can follow that movement with your breathing, letting each slow inhale find the upper pool and each slow exhale settle into the lower water. The walls nearby are close enough now that the evening air feels held between them, cooled by shadow and softened by the presence of the pools. When you look at the rock, you can see how water has touched it in different moods, sometimes with a clear vertical stain, sometimes with a broad polish where seasonal flow has pressed close. Over years beyond counting, the wadi has become a patient instrument, and every surface has been tuned by sun, mineral, and moving shade. There are small shelves in the stone where sand has gathered, and on these shelves lie leaves, seed pods, and pale fragments of old reeds. They seem arranged by no hand, yet they rest with the quiet order that water gives to like things. A narrow line of dampness darkens the rock just above the pool, showing where the surface was higher before it eased downward into the season's more careful level. In that mark, you can read the gentle breathing of the wadi across time, though it never needs to explain itself in words. A pool rises after rain, lowers under sun, receives small seepages from hidden cracks, and changes by the width of a finger, while the mountains remain still around it. The changes are subtle enough that they feel almost private, like thoughts moving beneath a calm face, and they give the place a sense of quiet presence. The water's edge becomes more intricate when you lean closer, because the line between pool and stone is not a simple boundary. There are wet grains clinging to the shallows, tiny bubbles caught against mossy growth, and delicate threads of algae bending with the faint current. A beetle moves slowly through the margin, leaving a trembling trace that vanishes as soon as the surface gathers its smooth mirror again. The pool is clear, but not empty, and its clarity holds small mysteries rather than removing them. Below the reflected sky, fine sediment lies in soft fans, where earlier currents slowed and released what they were carrying. Each pale fan, each darker pocket, Each smooth patch of stone is part of the wadi's gentle map, written not with ink, but with settling. Farther along, the canyon floor opens into a wider bowl where several rounded boulders sit half in shade and half in the last blue of evening. They have the stillness of sleeping animals, though they are only stone, resting where water once moved around them with enough persistence to polish their shoulders. Between them, the pool is divided into little rooms of reflection, each one holding a different portion of the fading sky. The boulders tell a quiet story of gravity and weathering, of rock loosened from higher walls and carried or rolled into place during fuller seasons. Now they seem permanent. But the wadi knows that even permanence is only a slower kind of movement. Their surfaces are warm above the waterline and cool below it, and that meeting of temperatures feels like a soft seam between day and night. You can place your palm against one of these stones and sense the day leaving it gradually, not all at once. The warmth withdraws from the outer surface, while the interior keeps a muted memory of sun, and the water takes the heat gently where it touches. Around your hand, the wadi feels like a place where elements speak quietly to each other, and no single voice needs to rise above the rest. The small lives in the pool continue with their evening habits, and their movements become easier to notice as your own body grows still. Fish hold near the darker wall, then shift together by a few inches, turning so softly that the water barely shows their passing. A winged insect touches down, lifts again, and is briefly doubled by its reflection, so that for one delicate moment there are two sparks over the surface. In the shallows, the plants seem to drink the last light as carefully as they drink water. Thin stems lean over the pool, and their shadows fall across submerged stones like soft, wavering threads. Where roots enter damp silt, the ecosystem gathers around them because roots slow the water, hold fine sediment, and make small sheltered places for life to rest and feed. This is how the wadi builds gentleness out of structure, not by filling every space, but by leaving edges where different things can meet. Stone meets water, water meets root, root meets silt, and silt becomes a bed for the green film that feeds the smallest grazers. The whole place is made from meetings like these, quiet contacts that create a living border around each pool. As darkness deepens, the canyon's upper walls disappear first, not into blackness, but into a blue-gray softness that feels far away. The lower walls remain visible because the water reflects what little sky is left, sending a faint glow upward from the pool. This borrowed light makes the wadi seem lit from within, as though the landscape has saved a small part of the day for itself. You can hear a quieter trickle now, one you may not have noticed. When the light was stronger, it comes from somewhere behind a stone lip, where water passes over a shallow step and enters the pool in a thread no wider than your hand. The sound is steady, delicate, and low, and it gives the darkness a gentle rhythm that the body can follow without trying to listen. The trickle has its own small geology, because even a narrow thread can leave minerals behind as it moves and evaporates. Over time, such water may create pale crusts, thin deposits, and smooth, varnished paths where the rock appears slightly different from the dry stone nearby. These traces are quiet records of chemistry, made by dissolved minerals, changing temperatures, and the slow return of air. Near the trickle, the rock is cooler and darker, and a few small plants have found enough moisture to hold their leaves open. They are not lush in the way of a riverbank, but their greenness feels vivid against the pale stone. In a dry mountain valley, even a small leaf can seem like a lantern of life, glowing with the calm insistence of water. You move only in thought now, following the wadi upstream into its hidden folds, where the pools may lie under narrower walls and the light may enter as thin vertical ribbons. In those places, sound becomes rounded because stone returns each drop and murmur in a softened echo. The pool below such a cleft might be dark even at midday, holding coolness as carefully as a bowl holds moonlight. The idea of that upstream shade settles over you like another layer of evening. You can imagine smooth limestone under your feet, a shallow passage between walls, and the water deepening suddenly into a still basin, where the reflected sky is only a narrow blue thread. Nothing needs to happen there beyond the ordinary exchange of water, stone, and light, because the ordinary is already full of wonder. Many Omani wadis carry this feeling of hiddenness, not secrecy exactly, but the sense that the landscape reveals itself in small chambers. A bend in the rock opens to a pool. A pool leads to a polished chute, and the chute releases you into a basin with palms leaning above it. The sequence is slow and intimate, like turning pages in a book made from mineral shade and silence. The mountains around these wadis have endured lifting, folding, weathering, and long exposure to sun and wind. Some of their rocks carry origins far older than the visible channel, and some speak of ancient ocean crust brought high into the dry air of Oman. To sit beside a pool in such a place is to rest where deep geological time touches the present with extraordinary softness. The water itself is temporary in form, though continuous in relationship. It may appear as a pool, a seep, a spring, a shallow flow, or a hidden movement beneath gravel, depending on season and stone. Yet wherever it appears, it gathers life around it, and wherever it disappears, it leaves signs that can be read by roots, animals, and the patient eye. Even the dry stones beyond the pool are part of the water's story, because their shapes were made by passing flow and by long weathering under open sky. They rest in terraces, bars, and pale heaps along the channel, sorted by size in ways that reveal the strength of former currents. Now, in the evening quiet, those same stones seem weightless in the half-light, as if the wadi has set them down for sleep. You notice how the colors have softened into fewer tones, with cream rock becoming ash, green water becoming dark glass, and palm leaves becoming layered silhouettes. The simplification is restful because the mind no longer needs to follow every edge and glint. It can settle into larger shapes instead, into the curve of the basin, the line of the wall, and the long pooled shadow. A little farther downstream, another pool waits in deeper dusk, and its surface is so still that it seems almost covered by a veil. The water there may be shallower, but because the sky is dim, it looks bottomless in the gentle way. One smooth stone breaks the surface near the edge, and the reflection around it bends into a dark oval, breathing slowly with each faint ripple. The word pool can sound small, but here it contains an entire mood of the landscape. It is a resting place for water, a mirror for stone, a refuge for small life, and a cool pause inside the heat-shaped valley. It is also a memory of rain and a promise of return, even when the surrounding slopes appear dry and still. The air above the water now carries a slight coolness that makes the skin aware of evening. It is not cold, but it has left the day behind, and it slides down the canyon with the ease of something familiar. The pool receives this cool air, the stone releases its stored warmth, and the wadi enters the balanced hour when everything feels held between temperatures. You could imagine lying back on a smooth ledge, not sleeping yet, but letting the body become heavy in the kindness of the place. The stone supports you without effort, the water murmurs nearby, and the canyon walls rise at the edges of your vision like old guardians of silence. Above them, the first stars begin to appear in the narrow sky, quiet enough that they seem less like lights and more like openings. When stars come to a wadi pool, they arrive twice, once in the high air and once in the darkened water. Their reflections may tremble if a breeze moves across the surface, or stretch and vanish if a fish disturbs the pool from below. In that doubling, sky and earth seem to lean toward each other, meeting inside a thin black-green mirror. The wadi at night does not become empty, it simply gives more room to sound and scent. The smell of wet stone grows clearer, the palms become darker, and the water's smallest movements carry farther in the cool air. A drop from a seep can seem to cross the whole canyon, though it remains only a drop, falling, touching, and joining the pool. There is comfort in the scale of this place, because it is both vast and intimate at once. The mountains hold ancient structures, wide slopes, and old tectonic histories, while the pool holds one floating leaf and a few small fish in its shaded bowl. Your attention can move between these scales as slowly as water moves through gravel, and each scale offers the same quiet patience. If you listen long enough, you may begin to sense the wadi as a continuous breathing body rather than a series of separate pools. The high catchments gather rain, the slopes release stones, the channels guide flow, the basins hold water, and the plants mark where moisture stays closest to the surface. Every part participates in the same slow pattern, and the pattern feels peaceful because it belongs to time. The palms by the water appear almost motionless now, though their highest fronds sometimes shift against the sky. That small movement is enough to remind you that the night air is moving through the valley, following the same corridor that water follows in another season. Air and water both find the low places, both curve around stone, and both teach the wadi how to flow. Along the pool's edge, tiny mineral crystals may form where water has dried, leaving a pale trace like breath on stone. These traces are delicate and easily overlooked, but they hold a story of evaporation, dissolved minerals, and repeated wetting under a generous sun. They are the quiet handwriting of the pool, left behind when water becomes air and returns to the larger cycle. You do not need to separate science from wonder here, because each makes the other calmer. Knowing that water shapes limestone through chemistry does not reduce the beauty of a smooth hollow. It makes the hollow feel even more patiently made. Knowing that roots follow hidden moisture does not make the palm less graceful. It makes its shade feel connected to unseen depths. The wadi's darkness continues to gather, but it does so kindly, with no sharp edge between visible and invisible. A stone that was clear a moment ago becomes a softer shape, then a suggestion, then part of the wider shadow at the pool's side. The mind can follow that fading and release its own insistence on detail, letting the night make everything more whole. The water still carries small lights from above, and each reflected star is touched by the faintest motion. If the surface were perfectly still, the stars would be fixed there, but the pool is alive enough to let them tremble. That trembling makes them tender, as though the sky itself has softened before resting in the wadi. You may think of all the other pools resting now in nearby valleys, some open beneath palms, some hidden between pale walls, some reduced to cool pockets under stone ledges. Each one has its own arrangement of reflections and roots, its own small animals, its own deposits of sand and leaf. Across the mountains, they form a scattered constellation of water on earth, quiet points of life held in dry landscape. This constellation changes with the seasons, brightening after rain, dimming under long sun, and shifting as channels open or fill with gravel. Yet the pattern remains, because the mountains still gather water, and gravity still draws it through the old, carved pathways. The Wadi pools belong to a cycle larger than any single basin, and that larger cycle moves with a steadiness that can calm the mind. You are still beside one pool, but imagination lets you feel the whole system breathing around you. Upstream, darkness settles into a narrow gorge. Downstream, the channel widens toward dry stones and sparse trees. Below the surface, hidden moisture moves through gravel at a pace too slow to hear. The visible pool is only the quiet face of a deeper movement, and its calm becomes more meaningful when you sense what rests beneath. There is a softness in the way water stores the day, not as heat alone, but as color and reflection. It has held blue sky, ochre stone, green reeds, silver insects, and the shadow of your own stillness. Now it releases those images one by one into the dark, keeping only a dim sheen and the low murmur of continuing. The rocks, too, are releasing the day, and their cooling is almost like breathing out. The ledges that burned pale under noon become gentle under evening, and the boulders near the water lose their hard brightness. In the absence of glare, their rounded forms seem more compassionate, as though time has softened not only their edges, but their presence. This is the gift of twilight in a canyon, that it removes intensity without removing beauty. It lets the wadi become quieter in color, richer in sound, and more spacious in feeling, while the pool remains at the center like a calm eye. You can rest your attention there, on the dark water, and let every other thought drift towards its edge. A small current enters from the left, so faint that it is visible only where reflected stars stretch and mend. The current carries coolness from a shaded pocket upstream, along with fine particles too small to name, and perhaps the scent of wet stone gathered from the narrow passage. It moves through the pool slowly, touches the far side, and continues downward with the same patient purpose. Purpose may be too human a word for water, yet it is hard not to feel intention in its persistence. Water does not hurry, but it returns. It does not argue with stone, but it finds the opening. It does not hold one shape, but takes every shape given to it. Beside the wadi pool, that kind of yielding begins to feel like a form of strength. You can let that thought pass through you without holding it tightly. The night does not require conclusions, and the wadi does not ask for any. It only offers the quiet facts of stone and water, of darkness and small life, of a pool that remains calm while everything reflected in it slowly changes. The deeper night brings out a wider silence, though the silence is layered with tiny, living sounds. A faint rasp from the reeds, a soft wing near the water, a distant pebble shifting as cooled rock contracts, and the delicate thread of the trickle all settle together. None of these sounds breaks the stillness, because each one belongs to it, the way small stars belong to a dark sky. If you were to look down into the pool now, you might see only the nearest stones and the dim shape of the wall beyond them. The rest would be held in darkness, not hidden with severity, but kept in a kind of restful privacy. This unseen depth is part of the pool's calm, because it allows the mind to stop reaching and begin resting. The wadi has many kinds of darkness, and each one is gentle in its own way. There is the cool darkness beneath a ledge, the green darkness in deep water, the blue darkness between canyon walls, and the soft brown darkness of damp sediment at the bottom of a pool. Together they make a place where night feels textured, layered, and quietly alive. In the sediment, small processes continue even when the surface is still. Fine grains settle, organic fragments soften, microorganisms work invisibly, and minerals meet water in exchanges too small and steady to be seen. The pool is sleeping only in appearance because its hidden chemistry and life continue with the slow tenderness of earth. This thought can be soothing. That rest does not require emptiness or absence. A resting landscape may still be full of gentle work, so quiet that it becomes part of the silence rather than an interruption. Your own body may be like that now, outwardly still, inwardly continuing its soft rhythms, while the wadi keeps you company in darkness. The stars brighten above the canyon and the strip of sky seems deeper than it did before. Because the walls frame it so narrowly, the sky appears almost like another pool, a long dark basin filled with distant light. The wadi below and the sky above answer each other, one holding water in stone, the other holding stars in space. You can imagine the moon rising later, washing the upper ledges in a pale glow and placing a silver path on the pool. Under moonlight, the colors would change again, losing warmth and becoming soft shades of bone, pearl, and blue-gray shadow. The water would no longer reflect the day's brightness, but a quieter light that seems made for listening. Even without the moon, the wadi has enough light to suggest its shapes. Your eyes adjust, and what seemed invisible becomes gently present, not detailed, but known by outline and contrast. The pool, the ledge, the reeds, and the wall return slowly from the dark, and each one feels more peaceful for having disappeared and returned. The landscape seems to be teaching a slower way of seeing, where objects do not need to be sharp before they are real. You can recognize the presence of a palm by the softness it makes against the sky, and the presence of water by the faint sheen where darkness gathers differently. In this way, the wadi invites trust in partial sight, in suggestion, in the calm of not needing everything. A breeze moves down the canyon, touches the pool, and passes on, leaving the surface lightly wrinkled. The reflected stars loosen into thin, trembling lines, then gather back into points as the air becomes still again. This small change feels like a breath passing across the face of the water, brief and tender and almost unspoken. The breeze carries the dry scent of upper slopes, mixed with the cooler smell of damp stone near the pools. It links the open mountain with the sheltered channel, reminding you that the wadi is not separate from the surrounding land. The same air that crosses ridges and gravel plains has come here to move softly over water, and in doing so, it becomes part of the pool's quiet weather. You settle deeper into the place, not by moving downward, but by letting attention become more spacious. The first layer was sight, with its color and reflection. Then came sound with its trickles and insects. Now comes the slower awareness of temperature, texture, and time. Each layer receives you more quietly than the last, until the wadi feels less like a scene before you and more like a resting place within you. The stone beneath you is firm, and that firmness is calming because it belongs to something older than the moment. It has held heat, water, shadow, and the passing of countless seasons without needing to become anything else. In a world of movement, the rock offers stillness, while the water offers change, and the two together create a kind of balance. This balance shapes the wadi pools at every scale. Too much sun, and the water withdraws. Enough shade and coolness lingers. Enough flow and oxygen returns. Enough stillness, and sediment settles into soft floors. The ecosystem lives inside these balances, modest and exact, its quiet richness depending on relationships that feel almost like listening. You can imagine morning here, though night has not finished arriving, because the wadi holds every hour in memory. At dawn, the first light would touch the high wall while the pool remained dark, and birds would move through the palms with careful sounds. Mist might not rise, but the air near the water would feel cooler than the stones above, carrying the day's first breath. Then sunlight would slide downward, slowly finding ledges, reeds, and the shallow edges where small fish turn among stones. The pool would brighten from black-green to emerald, then to a clear pale blue where the sky opens above it. The day would begin without haste, and the wadi would accept the light as gently as it accepts rain. But now, in this hour, the day is only a memory held in stone. The present belongs to darkness, coolness, and the soft continuation of water through the canyon. You remain with it, letting the imagined morning drift away, because the night beside the pool is enough, and its quiet has become very deep. The canyon walls seem taller now, because their tops have disappeared into shadow and sky. Only the lower stone remains close, pale enough to sense, curved enough to guide the eye back toward the pool. The wadi feels like a hollow made for rest, carved by water and filled by night, with the world beyond the walls growing distant and muffled. A tiny sound rises from the reeds, perhaps an insect shifting its place among the stems. It passes quickly, but not sharply, and the silence folds around it without disturbance. The pool remains dark and receptive, taking in the sound, the starlight and the slow cooling air with the same gentle patience. There is no single center to the wadi's peace, though the water draws the eye again and again. Peace is also in the rounded stones, in the shadow under the ledge, in the roots gripping damp silt, and in the faint line where the sky rests between cliffs. The whole landscape participates, not loudly, but with a shared calm that seems to move through everything like groundwater. Groundwater is a hidden kind of patience, traveling through pores, cracks, and gravel beds long after surface flow has faded. It may emerge in springs or seep quietly into a basin, sustaining a pool when the open channel appears dry. In such places, the visible water is only a small window into a larger, slower movement beneath the wadi. Thinking of that hidden movement makes the pool feel deeper than its measured depth. Beneath the still surface, and below the stones at the bottom, the landscape may hold moisture in dark spaces where roots and minerals meet. The canyon is not only carved from above by rain, but nourished from within by water that travels quietly through its bones. You can feel how this knowledge changes the silence without making it busier. The quiet is no longer an absence, but a covering over many slow processes, each one moving at a pace that asks nothing from you. Water seeps, minerals dissolve, roots grow, sediment settles, and the night continues opening its wide, unhurried hand. The stars above the wadi are steady now, though the pool makes them tremble whenever the surface moves. A little ripple travels from the inlet, crosses the reflected sky, and softens one star into a pale thread before it gathers again. It is a small event, and yet it contains the whole wadi's way of being, where motion and stillness are always sharing the same place. You may notice that your own thoughts have begun to resemble those ripples, appearing, widening, and fading without needing to be followed. The pool offers a pattern for that release because it does not hold on to each disturbance after it passes. It receives, responds, and returns to calm not by force, but by the natural ease of water. The wadi is patient enough for every thought to settle. It has time for sand to become smooth, for ledges to round, for seeds to find cracks, and for pools to fill and fade through seasons. Beside it, your mind can stop measuring itself against hurried things and begin to move at the speed of stone. In that slower movement, the landscape grows more intimate. The pool is not simply beautiful from a distance, it is close enough to touch, to smell, to hear in the slight changing of its edge. The canyon is not only large, it is also made of small, sheltered places where a hand can rest, where a leaf can float, and where a fish can hold still. A long time ago, the rock around you began as parts of worlds very different from this quiet evening. Some layers formed under ancient seas, some were altered by pressure and heat, and some were lifted into mountains through forces too slow and immense to witness directly. Now those old materials make a basin for clear water, and their vast history arrives here as calm. This is one of the gentlest astonishments of a wadi pool, that enormous geological processes can end in such tender forms. A polished ledge, a shaded basin, a green margin of reeds, and a quiet place for reflected stars can all arise from the slow reshaping of the earth. Nothing in that story needs drama to feel powerful, because its power is contained in duration. The night has fully entered the lower channel now, and the last color has left the stone. What remains is form, texture, temperature, and the quiet sound of water continuing its small passage. You can let your eyes close for a while and still know where the pool is, because its presence gathers in the air as coolness. With eyes closed, the wadi becomes less visual and more like a gentle arrangement of sensations. Warm stone under your body, cooler air over your face, dampness nearby, and the steady thread of trickling water create a landscape you can feel without seeing. The canyon walls become a shelter in the mind, and the pool becomes a dark, breathing center. Each sound arrives with space around it. The trickle, the reed, the soft wing, the distant shift of gravel, and your own slow breathing do not compete with one another. They drift together, separated by quiet intervals, as if the wadi itself is speaking in long sentences of water, stone, and night. You can rest inside those intervals. They are not empty pauses, but gentle openings where the body releases effort and the mind stops leaning forward. In the pool, a tiny ring may be widening unseen, and in the canyon, cooled air may be sliding around a boulder, and still everything feels held in ease. The wadi pools of Oman are often clear enough to reveal the bottom, but tonight their darkness offers a different kind of clarity. It does not show you every stone, yet it shows you how little needs to be seen for a place to feel complete. The water becomes an invitation to trust the unseen portions of a landscape, the submerged, the shaded, and the quiet. In the dark pool, fish may settle near the bottom, or hold close to protected edges where the current is soft. Their world is not silent to them because water carries vibration, scent, pressure, and the smallest changes in movement. Yet from where you rest, their lives are sensed only as occasional ripples, tiny signs of a hidden community. That hidden community continues without needing attention, and there is peace in that. The wadi does not perform its beauty, it simply lives within the limits and gifts of its climate, geology, and water. Its richness is not a spectacle, but a steady arrangement of relationships that endure through brightness, darkness, wetness, and dryness. You can imagine the pool during a long dry spell, smaller but still luminous, held in the deepest part of the basin. The margins would shift inward, exposing damp rings of stone and pale deposits where the surface once rested. Plants would lean closer to what remains, fish would gather in the cooler sections, and the wadi would become even more careful with its water. Then, after mountain rain, the pools would rise again, filling hollows, connecting basins, and refreshing the channels with a brighter movement. The water would carry new sand, leaves, and dissolved minerals through the gorge, renewing the edges and changing the small arrangements of life. This renewal is part of the wadi's rhythm, not an interruption, and the pools receive it as another phase of returning. Now, though, the renewal is quiet and internal. Each trickle, each seep, each cooling breath of night continues the work of keeping the pool present. The wadi is not waiting for spectacle, it is complete in this low hour, with dark water gathered among stones and the sky resting above in silence. The sediment at the bottom of the pool has its own softness, built from fine grains brought by water and laid down when the current lost strength. Some grains may have traveled from higher slopes, some from nearby walls, and some from the slow breakdown of stones within the channel itself. Together they make a pale, yielding floor where leaves settle and tiny life moves quietly through silt. Sediment records the energy of water without raising its voice. Coarser stones remain where stronger flow can leave them, while finer particles settle in calmer pockets. So the wadi floor becomes a history of movement arranged by weight. To read it is to see how the pool has breathed through seasons, sometimes full, sometimes low, always changing with grace. This grace is not fragile in the way a glass object is fragile, but it is finely balanced. Shade, flow, temperature, and replenishment matter, and each pool depends on the larger health of the mountain catchment around it. Yet the landscape itself seems wise in conservation, holding water in hollows, hiding moisture underground, and giving life places to gather near coolness. You may think of the high slopes after nightfall, their rocks cooling under stars and their dry channels pointing downward toward the pools. The whole mountain seems to lean toward the wadi, not with urgency, but with the quiet certainty of gravity. If rain comes someday, water will know the way, following old lines cut through stone by centuries of falling. Until then, the existing pools hold the memory of that path. They lie in the channel like beads on a thread, separated by stone and gravel, connected by slope and hidden moisture. Each one is a pause in the long descent from ridge to valley, and each pause gives the water time to become reflective. You are resting beside one of those pauses now, held in the dark interval between day and whatever morning will bring. The pool is no longer green to the eye, but you remember it's green, and that memory seems to glow softly behind the darkness. The mind does this with peaceful places, carrying their colors inward after the light has gone. The stone is cool beneath your hand now, and the day's stored warmth has nearly left it. Your fingers can trace a shallow groove where water has passed many times, and the smoothness of that groove is soothing because it was made by repetition. The same motion, repeated beyond counting, has turned roughness into tenderness, and that thought settles with unusual quiet. Perhaps all calm landscapes teach some version of repetition. Waves shape coasts, wind shapes dunes, glaciers shape valleys, and here, in the mountains of Oman, seasonal water shapes the wadi pools with patience and return. The lesson is not spoken, but felt through the hand on stone, through the ear beside water, and through the slow breath that follows. The canyon has become almost entirely shadow, yet it does not feel closed. The darkness is open above, where stars continue across the narrow sky, and open below, where water holds unmeasured depth in its black surface. Between those openings, you rest at the edge of the pool, part of the wadi's calm for a little while. A faint glimmer appears where the trickle enters, catching starlight on a moving thread. It is the brightest point in the lower canyon now, though it is hardly bright at all. The eye returns to it because motion gathers light differently than stillness, and the small moving line reminds you that the wadi continues its quiet journey. That journey is not a straight line, even if gravity gives it direction. Water hesitates in basins, seeps through gravel, slips behind stones, evaporates into air, condenses in cooler hours, and returns through weather in ways too wide to follow completely. Every pool is both a destination and a beginning, a place of arrival and release within the same cycle. You can allow yourself to be like that water for a moment, arriving where you are and releasing what has already passed. The wadi does not ask you to become still forever, only to know stillness while it is offered. In the dark, with the pool beside you and the stone holding your weight, that stillness feels entirely enough. The night insects continue their fine movements near the reeds, never loud enough to disturb the deeper hush. Their sounds are woven into the canyon air, delicate as threads drawn through fabric. The pool listens without changing, and the stones listen too. In the silent way, stones receive every passing vibration and hold nothing too tightly. Above the far wall, a brighter star appears, and its reflection finds the pool after a moment. It trembles near the edge, then lengthens as a ripple passes under it. becoming a slender line that almost touches the reflected stone. For a breath, sky and canyon are joined by light on water, and the whole scene seems to rest inside that connection. The connection fades as the ripple dissolves, but its quiet feeling remains. This is how the Wadi offers beauty, not as something fixed, but as a sequence of small arrivals that appear and vanish without loss. A reflection, a wing, a drop, a cool current, a scent of damp stone, and then the return to stillness. The more you notice these small arrivals, the less separate they feel. Each belongs to the same slow landscape where geological time and living time meet in the present moment. The mountains hold the long story, the insects hold the brief one, and the pool holds both stories together in its dark surface. You can feel sleep approaching as a kind of inward wadi, a place where thoughts narrow, soften, and gather into deeper pools. The day's details move downstream, losing their edges as they go, while quieter images remain near the surface. Warm stone, green water, blue shadow, palms in dusk, and the faint trickle under stars become a calm sequence leading downward. There is no need to finish the thought. The wadi does not finish its work in one night, and neither does the mind need to complete every path it begins. Some thoughts can seep away like water under gravel, continuing somewhere unseen, while you remain beside the pool in simple rest. The last sounds of the day have been replaced by the first sounds of deep night. They are softer, wider, and more evenly spaced, carried by cooler air through the canyon's hollow shape. Every sound seems to travel a little farther now, and yet the silence around it feels larger, darker, and more kind. You are still near the water, and the water is still near you. That closeness is enough to anchor the whole night, because the pool holds the sky, the canyon, the roots, the sediment, and a small reflection of your own quiet presence. Nothing needs to be added, and nothing needs to be taken away, while the wadi continues breathing through stone and shadow. Slowly, the imagined edges of the place begin to blur, as they do when sleep comes near. The pool remains, but it becomes less a pool you are looking at, and more a feeling of coolness gathered in darkness. The canyon remains, but it becomes a sheltering curve around the mind, broad and ancient and softly closed. In that softness, the geology of the wadi becomes almost dreamlike, though it is entirely real. Ancient rock lifted high, rain drawn through valleys, water polishing stone, sediment settling in clear basins, and small lives gathering wherever moisture allows them to continue. The facts remain steady, but they lose their sharpness, becoming part of the same long, lulling murmur. The pool's surface is dark enough now that it reflects only the strongest points of light. Between them lies a deep, unbroken tone, like polished stone or cooled glass. If a fish moves below, the motion reaches the surface as a faint widening circle, and then the darkness becomes whole again. You may feel that widening circle inside your breathing, a gentle expansion followed by a return. Nothing presses, nothing hurries, and nothing asks to be solved. The wadi holds the night with the same patience it gives to water, and that patience settles over you like shade. A final trace of warmth leaves the ledge beside you, and the stone becomes part of the cool evening earth. The pool, the reeds, the boulders, and the narrow sky all seem to share one temperature now, or at least one mood. It is the mood of a desert mountain valley after light has faded, when water remains as the softest thing in darkness. The air smells of minerals, damp silt, and faint dry leaves. It is a simple scent, but it carries the whole place, because it comes from stone touched by water and plants held close to moisture. Breathing it in, you feel as though the wadi has become very near, not only around you, but within the quiet chambers of breath. And so you remain beside the OMAN Wadi pool, as the night deepens without ceremony, with no sharp ending to the day and no need for the next thing to arrive. The water continues its faint passage, the stars continue trembling on the surface, and the stone continues cooling by degrees, all moving together through a silence that feels old, spacious, and gentle. The silence does not stop at the edge of hearing, because it seems to continue into the stone, into the water, and into the spaces beneath the gravel. You could imagine it passing through small cracks in the canyon floor, where hidden moisture moves without sound and roots wait in darkness for the slow arrival of coolness. Even the dry stones beyond the pool feel included in that quiet, as though they too are listening for the old seasonal language of rain. The wadi at night becomes a landscape of touch more than sight, and every surface seems to speak through temperature. The ledge beside you has cooled into a gentle firmness, while the air above the pool keeps a softer chill, rising from the dark water in slow, almost invisible breaths. When your hand rests near the edge, you can feel that slight difference, the delicate meeting of warm earth and stored water. Somewhere upstream, beyond the bends you cannot see, another basin is holding the same night in its own shape. It may be narrow and deep, pressed between smooth walls, or shallow and wide, spread across pale stone like a quiet mirror. Each pool keeps the darkness differently, according to its depth, its shadow, its stones, and the small thread of flow that enters and leaves its silence. In the dry country around the wadi, water is never ordinary, yet here it does not announce itself with grandeur. It gathers where the land allows it, rests in basins made by erosion, and moves onward when the slope gently asks it to continue. This modest presence is part of its beauty, because the pool seems precious without seeming fragile, and calm without seeming still in any simple way. The canyon walls hold their own slow weathering, even through the night, as cooler air settles against their faces. Tiny differences in mineral, crack, and grain will answer heat and cold in their own ways, loosening small particles over long spans of time. What falls from the wall may one day become sand in a pool, or gravel in a channel, or dust lifted softly by morning wind. You can sense that the wadi is never finished, though its present stillness feels complete. It is being made, unmade, and remade through processes so slow they seem restful to the human mind. Water rounds the floor, air dries the ledges, roots test the seams, and gravity draws every loosened fragment downward toward a more settled place. The pool receives these fragments with no judgment, holding leaves, dust, stone grains, and the occasional drifting petal in the same clear basin. Some things float for a while, turning in small circles near the margin, while others sink and become part of the pale layer below. In this way, the pool is both mirror and archive, reflecting what is above and keeping what falls through it. A faint rustle moves through the palms, and the sound travels down the canyon like a soft cloth being drawn over stone. The fronds are high and dark now, but their movement changes the air, and the pool answers with a slight trembling along one side. Nothing is disturbed for long because the wadi absorbs motion slowly, folding it into its larger calm. You may begin to feel how the valley gathers the night around its water, as though the pool were a cool center drawing everything inward. The stones slope toward it, the reeds lean over it, insects trace its edges, and the reflected sky settles on its surface in trembling points. Even your attention comes to rest there again and again, because water gives the darkness a shape gentle enough for the mind to hold. Below the surface, the basin is quieter than the air, with submerged stones lying in their long arrangement of pale curves and shadow. The bottom may be uneven, dipping in one place and rising in another, shaped by former currents that moved sand in arcs and left heavier pebbles behind. The darkness softens these forms, but it does not erase them, and the pool keeps its hidden terrain. This underwater terrain is small compared with the mountain, yet it is a landscape for the creatures that live within it. A shallow ledge can be a feeding ground, a darker crevice can be shelter, and a patch of algae can be a whole pasture for tiny grazers. Scale changes everything, and the wadi reminds you that even a hand-sized hollow may contain a complete world. The fish in the pool live by reading subtleties that pass unnoticed above the surface. A shift in current, a vibration from the bank, a change in light, and the scent of organic matter carried by water all become part of their quiet understanding. They do not need the pool to be large in order for it to be full of paths, borders, openings, and signals. In daylight, you might watch them gather in clear groups near the shade, their bodies turning silver-green as they adjust to the current. At night, they become almost entirely part of the water, visible only when a faint gleam catches a side or fin. Their hiddenness feels peaceful, because the pool gives them privacy, and the darkness lets their small lives continue unseen. The reeds along the margin are also changing with the night. closing some of their brightness and becoming mostly scent and silhouette. Their roots hold the bank in place, slow the water, and create a softer edge where silt can collect. In that narrow border, neither fully land nor fully pool, many quiet exchanges take place through decay, growth, moisture, and shade. A leaf falls from somewhere above, but its fall is so gentle that you hear only its meeting with the water. It lands, floats, and begins to drift along the surface, turning slowly as the faint current touches one side more than the other. The reflection of a star bends around it, and for a while the leaf carries a tiny piece of the sky across the pool. Eventually it will settle against the reeds or sink into the basin, becoming food for unseen processes that soften it grain by grain. Nothing is wasted in the wadi, because even the smallest fallen thing can join the pool's quiet chemistry. Decay here does not feel harsh, but like another form of returning, a slow loosening back into mineral, water, and life. This return is happening everywhere in the canyon, in dry leaves beneath palms, in dust along the path, and in the fine sediment beneath the water. The landscape is patient with change, because change has always been part of its stillness. What looks fixed is weathering, what looks empty is waiting, and what looks silent is often full of slow work. You can let your own thoughts follow that same pattern, loosening from their sharper shapes and drifting toward the bottom of awareness. They do not have to vanish abruptly, because the wadi teaches that settling is gentler than stopping. A thought can become like silt in clear water, falling slowly, catching light once, then resting where the current no longer pulls. The night has deepened enough that the pool's surface and the sky almost share one darkness. Only the angle of reflection lets you know where water begins, because stars tremble below while stars above remain still. Between them, the canyon walls are quiet boundaries, holding the two dark basins apart with their immense and patient stone. The walls themselves carry the memory of sun, even after they cool, because their surfaces were made visible all day by light. You remember the warm layers, the pale scars, the honey-colored stains, and the smooth, water-polished curves where feet and currents have passed. Now those details rest inside darkness, and the memory of them becomes part of the wadi's texture. In the morning, those forms will return slowly, appearing first as grey shapes, then as stone, then as color. But the night version of the wadi is not incomplete. It simply offers another kind of knowing. It lets you feel the canyon through outline, coolness, and sound, and it leaves the rest softened within shadow. A small breeze comes again, lighter than before, and it travels along the channel with the shape of the valley. It crosses the pool, touches the reeds, and lifts the scent of water from the surface, carrying it over stone that has been dry for hours. The breeze is brief, but it connects the whole scene, making air, water, plant, and rock part of one flowing gesture. When the breeze fades, the surface mends itself with such care that the eye can barely follow the change. Ripples lengthen, widen, and dissolve into the wider stillness, until the stars regain their delicate places in the pool. The wadi has no urgency to return to calm, because calm was never truly broken, only rearranged for a moment. This is the softness of water held in stone, that it can be touched and changed without losing itself. Every disturbance becomes part of its surface history, a brief pattern that spreads outward and fades. The mind, watching this, can learn a similar ease, allowing each inner ripple to move, widen, and gently pass. Above the pool, the stars look steady, but they too belong to motion on a scale too wide for the eye to restlessly measure. The earth turns, the sky appears to drift, and the narrow strip between canyon walls slowly changes its arrangement. Nothing in the wadi needs to mark the movement, because time is already passing through every cooled stone and reflected light. You can imagine the long hours after midnight, when the air becomes cooler still and the canyon holds its deepest quiet. The pool would darken further, the reeds would become almost one with the bank, and the stones would release the last faint memory of day. In that hour, the wadi might feel less like a place you visit and more like a stillness that has always been there. The mountains beyond the canyon would be dark slopes under stars, broad and silent, with dry gullies descending toward hidden watercourses. Some of those gullies may only run after rain, but their shapes remain ready, pointing down through the land like lines of quiet intention. The wadi pools lie within that wider network, held by mountain, weather, and gravity. Gravity is one of the gentlest presences here, though it shapes everything. It draws rain from high rock to low basin, guides falling leaves toward the pool, settles sediment into layers, and pulls cool air down along the channel after sunset. It is constant enough to be forgotten, yet every curve of the wadi carries its invisible signature. In the pool, gravity gives stillness its depth, encouraging heavier grains to rest and lighter things to float a little longer. It lets the water find its level, creating a surface so calm that sky and canyon can gather there. The simple levelness of a pool is soothing because it is the visible expression of balance, stretched gently between stone edges. Your body recognizes that balance, even without naming it. Shoulders loosen, the breath lengthens, and the mind stops climbing toward the next thought, settling instead into the low, steady presence of the water. The wadi does not demand relaxation, but it makes relaxation feel natural, the way shade feels natural after bright sun. There is a mineral taste in the air, faint but present, especially near the damp stones where water has recently touched. It is the taste of rock meeting moisture, of dissolved salts and weathered surfaces, of the earth becoming just a little more open to flow. Such small sensations make the place more real, anchoring the calm in stone, water, and breath. You can hear another drop fall from the wall, then another after a long interval, each one touching the pool with a soft, rounded sound. The spacing between them is irregular, which makes the mind stop counting and simply listen. They are not a rhythm to measure, but a reminder that water can arrive quietly, one drop at a time, from hidden seams. Those seams may be tiny cracks widened by heat, cooling, and the persistent touch of moisture over years. Water enters, dissolves, deposits, and leaves again, changing the rock in ways that seem almost too subtle to matter until time gathers them. The wadi's great forms are made from these small permissions, these openings through which water continues to return. A pool at the base of a wall often feels especially contemplative because it holds both vertical stone and horizontal calm. The wall rises, layered and firm, while the pool spreads flat beneath it, reflecting height in a surface thin enough to tremble under a breeze. One form reaches upward, the other receives, and together they make a quiet architecture of stillness. You can picture the cliff in daylight, mirrored in the water so clearly that the eye might not know where the real stone ends. Then a fish would move, or a drop would fall, and the reflected wall would loosen into bands of color before rebuilding itself in silence. That rebuilding is slow enough to be soothing, and it gives the pool a feeling of endless, gentle repair. Even the word erosion can sound sharper than what you see here, because the result is so smooth, rounded, and calm. Erosion is the shaping of surfaces through contact, through flow, through the long companionship of water and rock. In the wadi pools, it appears as polished channels, hollowed basins, and ledges curved softly enough to invite the hand to rest. The canyon floor preserves both motion and pause, with channels between pools and basins where water has lingered. These forms are not separate from one another, but phases of the same passage. A drop of rain might become a runnel might become a pool, and a pool might become hidden moisture beneath gravel before joining the wadi's underflow. Underflow is a quiet word for a quiet process, and it suits this place. Beneath stones that seem dry, water may continue to move through open spaces, protected from sun and held by the coolness of the ground. Plants and animals may depend on that unseen flow, and the visible pool becomes only the most luminous part of a larger reservoir. The presence of hidden water makes the dry stretches feel less empty. A pale gravel bed may look silent under the sun, yet beneath it a slow thread may be traveling, kept from view by the wadi's own stones. In this way, the landscape holds secrets kindly, not to conceal them, but to preserve them through heat and season. You can imagine daytime walkers passing through the wider valley, noticing first the bright cliffs and the dry channel, then hearing water before they see it. The sound would draw them gently around a bend, where the pool appears suddenly but without drama, gathered in shade like a thought the mountain has kept cool. That first sight would feel like discovery, though the pool itself has simply remained present. At night, the discovery is quieter still. because you already know the pool is there. You do not need to see it clearly to trust its presence, and this trust allows the darkness to become restful. The wadi holds what the eye cannot hold, keeping the water close and the canyon steady around it in shadow. A small animal may pass somewhere beyond the reeds, moving with a softness that barely disturbs the gravel. You do not need to follow it or name it, because its presence is enough to suggest the wider life of the valley. The pool is part of many routes and habits, a place visited in quiet moments by creatures that know the landscape through scent, memory, and need. Those visits leave traces that morning light may show, faint impressions near damp mud, a bent reed, or a stone shifted at the margin. The wadi records them gently and briefly until wind, water, or falling dust softens the marks again. In this way, the pool holds stories without keeping them too tightly, allowing every passage to become part of the larger hush. The hush deepens as the night air cools further, and the warmth of the day becomes a distant memory. You can sense the temperature settling downward through the canyon, filling lower hollows first, then spreading across stones and water. The pool seems to gather this coolness, storing it like another reflection, one that belongs not to sight, but to skin. If you could see the water in the dark with a softer kind of vision, you might notice how the surface changes with each temperature shift. Cooler air can draw a faint difference from the water, and the slightest currents can move between shaded and open parts of the basin. These exchanges are delicate, but they shape the comfort of life within the pool, arranging tiny gradients of warmth and cool. The fish, insects, and plants live within those gradients, following favorable edges without needing words for what they do. Life in a wadi pool is often the art of staying close to balance, finding enough oxygen, enough food, enough shade, enough space. The pool provides these things in modest ways, and its modesty feels restful because it leaves no room for excess. Around the basin, stones continue the same lesson of enough. They do not need to be grand to be beautiful, because each one has a smoothness, a weight, and a color shaped by its journey through the channel. Some have traveled from higher slopes, others may have loosened nearby and moved only a short distance before finding their rest. You can picture the next rain lifting some of them slightly, rocking them in a fuller current, then setting them down differently. A stone that rests beside your hand now may one day lie beneath the surface, or become part of a gravel bar, or turn slowly in a hollow as water passes around it. The wadi changes its arrangement without losing its identity, and that makes change feel less like disruption and more like breathing. There is comfort in knowing that the pool is part of a landscape larger than itself, yet small enough to sit beside. Vast mountain histories, seasonal rains, groundwater pathways, plant roots and fish movements all converge here, in this dark, quiet basin. You do not have to hold the whole system in your mind, because the pool holds it for you through its simple presence. The surface continues to reflect the stars, though fewer are visible where the canyon walls lean over the water. A dark ledge cuts across the reflection, making the sky below appear divided by stone. This division is gentle, and it gives the pool depth, as though the night itself has settled in layers between the reflected walls. You may let your gaze move from the reflected sky to the actual sky and back again, slowly enough that the difference begins to soften. The eye travels upward, through air, downward through water, and across the stone boundary between them. Each direction leads into quiet, and each quiet has a different texture, one distant, one near, and one held in rock. The wadi's calm becomes especially deep when you stop expecting it to change quickly. A cloud may pass unseen, a fish may move once, a reed may tremble, and the trickle may continue with the same delicate sound. These are enough events for the hour, because the purpose of the night is not spectacle, but settling. Settling happens slowly in the body as well as in the pool. The muscles release their small defenses, the jaw softens, the hands become heavy, and breath moves with less instruction from the mind. Beside the water, rest feels less like something you must create and more like something already present, waiting for you to enter. The pool is an entrance of its own, not into danger or depth in any dramatic sense, but into a slower way of perceiving. Its surface invites attention, then its transparency invites the eye downward, and its darkness invites the mind beyond what it can see. You are not falling into it, you are simply allowing awareness to become as calm as the water. Far above the wadi, the dry ridgelines continue under starlight, pale by day but nearly invisible now. Their slopes gather the future of the pools because every channel, crack, and shallow depression can guide water when rain returns. The night hides this catchment from view, but the pool below is proof of its quiet design. This design is not planned in a human way. It is the result of form-meeting process over long periods. Rock type, slope, rainfall, fracture, gravity, vegetation, and time all contribute to the paths water takes. The wadi is what happens when these elements are allowed to continue speaking to one another season after season with patient consistency. You can think of the pool as one syllable in that long conversation. It is held for a while, rounded by stone, brightened by day, darkened by night, and connected to other syllables upstream and downstream. Together, they make a language of water in an arid mountain landscape, a language that is quiet enough to be felt more than heard. The trickle at the inlet becomes softer, or perhaps your hearing has settled so deeply into it that it no longer stands apart. It is now part of the background of the wadi, like the coolness, the darkness, and the scent of damp stone. When a sound becomes that familiar, it stops asking for attention and begins to offer comfort. Comfort here is not plush or enclosed, but open, mineral, and spacious. It comes from the knowledge that stone can hold you, water can soothe you, and night can cover the valley without making it feel lost. The wadi's comfort is ancient and plain, made of surfaces that have known sun, rain, and time. A faint shimmer moves across the pool again, though the air seems still. It may be a fish below, a drop from above, or a small current crossing the basin from the inlet. The cause matters less than the effect, which is a slow rearrangement of reflected stars, a brief softening of the sky within the water. In that softening, you can let the boundaries of the day dissolve a little more. The things that felt separate begin to mingle, as reflections mingle with depth and warm stone mingles with cool air. The wadi does not erase distinction, but it loosens it gently, allowing each element to lean toward the others in peace. The darkness under the ledge is especially deep now, and it seems to hold more than the eye can enter. Perhaps a small crevice opens there, damp at the back, with mineral stains marking the path of an old seep. Perhaps the water at its base remains cool even in the hottest hours, protected by stone and fed by hidden moisture. Such shaded places are small sanctuaries within the canyon, preserving dampness and lowering temperature by a few meaningful degrees. Fern-like plants or fine mossy growth may cling there, if conditions allow, making a fragile green against the mineral wall. Their presence is quiet evidence that life finds not only abundance, but the smallest favorable difference. A few degrees of shade, a thin film of water, a crack wide enough for roots, and suddenly the stone face holds a living edge. The wadi's ecosystem depends on these slight variations. These places where the general harshness of the sun-softened mountains gives way to pockets of relief. To notice them is to understand that landscapes are made from details, and that care often lives in the smallest scale. You can feel your attention becoming more detailed without becoming more alert in a waking way. It is a relaxed noticing, a soft awareness that moves across the pool and its margins as slowly as a shadow. This kind of attention does not grasp. It rests on a reed, a stone, a ripple, and then drifts onward with ease. The night is long enough for drifting. It has room for the pool to darken, for the stars to shift, for cooled air to collect in the wadi bed, and for hidden water to continue beneath stones. It has room for your thoughts to loosen, circle, and settle until they no longer need to announce themselves at the surface of the mind. In the lower part of the basin, fine sediment may be settling even now, each particle descending through the water at its own speed. The smallest grains fall slowly, almost as if suspended between movement and rest, while larger grains have already found the bottom. This patient descent is invisible in the dark, yet it gives the pool its softness and its memory. Memory in a landscape is often physical. It is a stain on a wall, a groove in stone, a gravel bar after flood, a seedling at the edge of a seep, or a smooth basin where water has lingered. The wadi does not remember with thought, but with form, and its forms are calm because they have been made by repetition. You are part of the wadi's memory only briefly, perhaps as warmth on a ledge, a ripple from a hand, or a footprint near damp sand. The place does not need to keep you forever in order for the moment to matter. It holds you gently while you are here, then allows your presence to fade into the same quiet that precedes every passing. This can be a comforting way to belong to a natural place, lightly and without demand. You do not have to leave a mark to be included in the evening, because belonging can be as simple as listening beside water. The pool reflects you for a while, then reflects stars, and both reflections are accepted with the same patience. The canyon's darkness is now full enough that the shapes around you seem to breathe with the imagination. A boulder becomes a softer mound, a palm trunk becomes a dark column, and the water becomes a wide, low presence holding what light remains. These transformations are gentle, and they help the mind cross from observation into dreaming. Dreaming suits a wadi pool, because the pool itself seems to dream the canyon in reverse. It holds the walls upside down, gathers the sky beneath your feet, and makes depth from reflection as much as from water. In daylight, this is visual, but at night it becomes a feeling, the sense that the world has folded inward around a dark mirror. The mirror is never perfect, and that imperfection is part of its tenderness. A ripple stretches the stars, a leaf interrupts the sky, a reed shadow cuts across the surface, and the pool becomes more alive because it does not merely copy. It receives the world and gently changes it, returning everything softened by water and motion. Perhaps this is why sitting beside such a pool feels so restful. The wadi does not intensify experience, it filters it through shade, reflection, and time. Brightness becomes glow, sound becomes murmur, movement becomes ripple, and thought becomes something quieter, carried on the surface for a while before sinking into calm. The valley beyond the pool has nearly vanished into the night, yet you can sense its path continuing downhill. The channel curves away between stones, carrying hidden moisture and cooled air toward lower ground. If you followed it in the dark, every step would be slow, and the wadi would reveal itself only through touch, slope, and sound. But there is no need to follow it now. The pool itself contains enough journey because its water has come from above, rested here, and will continue in ways both visible and hidden. You can remain at its edge and still feel the downward movement of the landscape, the quiet passage from ridge to basin to valley to plain. Oman's mountain wadis often hold this sense of descent, from high dry slopes into shaded channels where water gathers in unexpected clarity. The journey is not only physical, but emotional, moving from glare into shade, from heat into coolness, from open exposure into the sheltered intimacy of stone. At each stage, the landscape becomes quieter, and the body answers by becoming quieter too. The wadi pool is one of the valley's deepest notes, even when it is not very deep in measure. Its stillness lowers the tone of the whole place, and the surrounding rock seems to listen around it. You can feel that low note continuing through the night, steady, dark, and soothing, like water held in the palm of earth. Above the pool, the stars are slowly changing position, though the change is almost too gradual to notice. The wadi allows that kind of movement, the kind that can only be recognized by patience. A long while passes, and a star that was above the wall is now nearer the ridge, and the pool has carried its reflection all the way through darkness. This long passage of starlight makes the night feel less empty and more spacious. It is not a blank interval between days, but a whole landscape of slow events, many of them too gentle for ordinary attention. The wadi helps you notice them without becoming alert, because its quiet keeps each event wrapped in softness. A cooled stone beside the pool contracts with a sound too faint to be certain, or perhaps it is only gravel settling somewhere beyond the reeds. The uncertainty is peaceful, because not every sound needs to be identified. The canyon can keep some of its small night movements unnamed, and you can rest without reaching toward every answer. The water continues, and that is enough. It enters, settles, reflects, cools, nourishes, and leaves by paths that may be visible or hidden. Each action is gentle, yet together they sustain the wadi's quiet ecosystem, shaping a place where life gathers not in abundance of noise, but in abundance of relationship. Relationship is what makes the pool feel whole. The water depends on stone basins, the plants depend on moisture, insects depend on margins, fish depend on flow, and the air depends on shade to carry its coolness through the valley. Nothing stands entirely alone here, and that interdependence has a soothing, grounded truth. You can let that truth settle without turning it into a lesson. The Wadi is not instructing you in any urgent way. It is simply existing, and its existence is enough to soften thought. Being near it, you may find yourself breathing more slowly, not because you were told to, but because the landscape itself breathes in long cycles. The cycle of day and night moves over the canyon, the cycle of wet and dry moves through the year, and the cycle of erosion and deposition moves through ages. At each scale, the Wadi responds by changing just enough to continue. It is a place of endurance without hardness, and that kind of endurance feels deeply restful. The water near the edge gives a faint sound against stone, almost like a whisper made physical. It comes and goes with tiny movements of the surface, not regular enough to be a rhythm, but steady enough to become familiar. The sound seems to gather at the level of the body rather than the mind, encouraging the breath to slow and lengthen. The longer you remain, the less separate you feel from the quiet around you. The warmth leaving your skin, the coolness rising from the pool, the stone beneath your hand, and the soft air moving through the canyon all become part of one field of sensation. You are not outside the landscape looking in. You are resting within its stillness. No great revelation is needed in a place like this. Its beauty is the patient fact of water and stone, of life along an edge, of a canyon holding darkness gently after a bright day. That is enough to fill the mind without stirring it, enough to make the night feel spacious and the body feel safe. The pool's surface darkens further, and now only a few stars remain visible within it. The rest of the water is a soft, continuous shadow, with no clear boundary between reflection and depth. Looking into it, you may feel your attention descend, not sharply, but gradually, as if the darkness were a smooth path leading inward towards sleep. Sleep, like water, finds low places when it is allowed. It moves around the day's remaining stones, fills the small hollows of fatigue, and settles wherever the mind stops resisting its quiet approach. Beside the Wadi pool, sleep feels like another natural element, as welcome as shade and as patient as rain. The canyon is ready for it. The reeds are still, the stones are cooled, the fish are hidden, and the trickle continues, with a voice so soft it seems to come from inside the night itself. Everything around you has entered a state of gentle continuation, not ending, not beginning, simply being carried through darkness by water. You may imagine the pool from above now, as if seen by a quiet bird passing between the canyon walls under stars. It would appear as a dark oval, held among pale stones, with palms leaning near it and a thin channel glimmering at one end. Around it, the Wadi would curve through the mountain like a narrow ribbon of shadow. From higher still, the whole valley would become one line among many, a branch of the larger mountain drainage, part of the land's quiet architecture. The pools would be too small to see, yet their existence would still matter, because they are the cool points where water pauses and life gathers. Even when unseen from a distance, their calm remains real, held in the folds of rock. Then the view returns to the edge of the pool, close enough to hear the water. The large pattern and the small sound belong together, just as the mountain and the fish belong to the same system. The Wadi is made of these scales folded into one another, and sitting beside it lets you feel that folding as peace. The night air rests against your face, neither cold nor warm, but balanced in a way that makes the body feel unhurried. A faint touch of moisture comes from the pool, while the dry canyon beyond keeps the scent of dust and stone. Between them, the air becomes a quiet mixture, and each breath seems to carry both desert and water. This mixture is the essence of the Wadi, where aridity and moisture meet without conflict. The dry land gives shape, mineral, heat, and openness, while the water gives coolness, reflection, movement, and life. Neither cancels the other. Together they create the particular serenity of these Omani pools, held between mountain sun and shaded depth. The pool does not need to be wide to hold vastness, because vastness can arrive through time as much as space. In its dark surface, there is the reflection of stars, the memory of ancient rock, the pattern of seasonal rain, and the ongoing lives of small creatures. It is a modest basin, yet it contains a long, quiet history. You can rest with that history without needing to travel through all of it. The present moment is enough, because the present has gathered the past into stone, water, sediment, and shade. Every smooth surface near you is a trace of former movement, and every dark depth is an invitation to let thought become slow. The trickle continues to enter the pool, and perhaps now it feels like the only clock the wadi needs. It does not count seconds, but it marks continuation, drop by drop, and thread by thread. In its sound, you can hear the persistence of hidden sources, of fractures, springs, and gravels offering water to the basin with care. Care, in this landscape, is not a feeling the wadi has, but a quality you perceive in its arrangements. Shade falls where it can, water gathers where stone allows, roots hold where moisture remains, and small lives use every gentle edge available to them. The result feels tender even though it is made from geology, climate, and time. This tenderness has no urgency. It has been here before you noticed it, and it will remain after your attention loosens into sleep. The pool will continue reflecting stars, the stones will continue cooling, and the hidden underflow will move through gravel with a patience that does not require witness. You can allow yourself to become less of a witness now. The wadi does not need your alertness, and the night does not need your effort. You can be present in a softer way, like a reflection on water held gently for a while and then released into darkness. The canyon walls, the pool, the palms, and the stars begin to feel less like separate images and more like one slow, surrounding dream. The dream is not distant from reality. It is reality made gentle by fatigue, darkness, and the steady sound of water. Every detail remains true, but it arrives more softly, as if passing through a veil of sleep. And still the wadi continues downward, beyond the pool where you rest, through stones that glimmer faintly, and channels that hold the coolness of night. It passes around bends, under roots, across smooth shelves, and into lower hollows where other pools wait in silence. The water does not rush to reach them, and you do not rush to follow, because everything here moves at the speed of settling. The thought of those lower pools is enough to carry you onward inwardly, without moving your body from the ledge. One basin leads to another and another, each quieter than the last, until the wadi becomes a chain of dark mirrors under the mountain sky. In each mirror, stars tremble, stones rest, and small lives continue with the same gentle patience. You may feel yourself drifting along that chain now, not walking, not swimming, but simply being carried by the idea of water descending through stone. The canyon opens and narrows, the air cools and warms by small degrees, and the night follows you softly from pool to pool. There is no destination except deeper calm, and the wadi offers it without end. At the edge of one imagined basin, a palm leans close enough for its reflection to meet the reeds below. At another, a limestone wall descends straight into dark water, making the pool seem deeper than sight can hold. At another, shallow stones shine faintly beneath the surface, pale and rounded, like moons resting at the bottom of a dream. All these pools belong to the same quiet landscape, the same conversation between mountain and rain. Their differences are small but meaningful, shaped by angle, depth, shade, and the character of the rock that holds them. Together they make a place where water does not dominate the land, but touches it with steady, renewing grace. The Omani night wraps around them slowly, and the desert beyond the canyon grows cooler under the stars. In the higher valleys, dry channels wait with patient openness, while here in the wadi's sheltered floor, water remains gathered and dark. This contrast makes the pools feel even more restful, not as exceptions to the land, but as the land's hidden breath. A final ripple moves across the pool nearest you, though final is only how it feels in this drowsy hour. There will be other ripples, other drops, other small movements through the night, but this one crosses the surface while your attention is still awake enough to follow it. It widens, softens, touches the stone reflection, and disappears into the larger calm. the larger calm remains. It rests in the canyon walls, in the dark water, in the stones beneath the surface, and in the unseen flow below the gravel. It rests in the palm roots, the reed beds, the tiny fish, the mineral stains, and the old lifted rocks that frame the wadi's winding path. It rests around you now, broad and cool and unhurried. You do not have to hold on to the scene for it to continue. The wadi can keep its pools, its stars, its trickle, and its deep stone quiet, while your awareness drifts more loosely at the edge of sleep. The last thing you may sense is water moving somewhere nearby, softly, persistently, carrying the night through the canyon one gentle thread at a time. A time is not a moment you can point to now, but a softness spreading through the whole hollow of the wadi. The water's thread remains present, though it seems to have moved farther inside the night, as if sound itself has settled beneath a layer of shade. You can feel the canyon holding this hour with the same patience it gives to stone, allowing every edge to soften without disappearing completely. The pool beside you is still dark, and yet it is not the same darkness it held a little earlier. Night deepens by degrees, and each degree changes the water's surface, taking away one faint reflection and giving another back in quieter form. The stars that remain above the pool seem steadier now, because your own gaze has slowed enough to meet their stillness. In the gravel near the bank, there may be tiny hollows where earlier water withdrew and left the stones damp for a while. By morning, some of that dampness may have vanished into the air, while some may have slipped lower between the grains, hidden from the sun. The wadi knows these small departures intimately, and it lets them happen without loss, because water is always moving between presence and return. You can imagine that hidden moisture traveling slowly under the bed of the channel, protected by layers of pebble, sand, and shadowed stone. It may pass beneath a dry-looking stretch and reappear where the bedrock rises, feeding another pool with no clear announcement. Such movement gives the whole valley a secret continuity, a calm underground sentence written in water. Above the underground flow, the visible pool remains like a quiet word in that sentence, a place where the hidden becomes briefly open to the sky. It gathers the reflected stars, the dark stems of the reeds, and the faint outline of the canyon wall in one patient surface. If you breathe slowly enough, the pool's calm seems to breathe with you, widening inward and returning again to center. The surrounding rocks are not smooth everywhere, though the places touched by water often are. Higher on the wall, dry surfaces hold rougher textures, small ledges, cracks and grainy patches that catch dust and moonless shadow. Lower down, near the pool, the stone becomes more rounded, as if the wadi has gently taught it the language of flow. This shaping is a kind of slow listening between elements, because water finds the stone's weakness, and stone gives water a path. Neither acts alone, and neither remains unchanged. After long contact, the basin you are resting beside is the result of that long exchange. A hollow made by persistence, quiet chemistry, passing sediment, and countless seasons of returning rain. When the mind becomes drowsy, these processes begin to feel less like separate facts and more like one continuous movement. Rain falls far away, gathers in a high channel, travels through stone, fills a pool, nourishes roots, reflects the sky, sinks underground, and waits. The whole journey folds into the dark surface beside you, where nothing appears to be happening and everything is gently connected. The air carries a slight chill now, though it remains mild enough to feel like a soft touch rather than a command to move. Coolness flows along the wadi floor because denser air settles into low places, making the channel feel different from the warm slopes above. You feel it around your hands, your face, and the edge of the pool, where the night gathers most quietly. The palms stand in that coolness without hurry, their trunks dark and still, their fronds lifted into the faint star field above the canyon. By day, they offer shade. By night, they give shape to the darkness and a dry whisper when air passes through them. Their presence reminds you that the wadi is not only stone and water, but a place of rooted life. Roots are patient travelers in their own way, moving slowly through soil and cracks towards moisture they cannot see. They thicken where water is steady, pause where stone resists, and find themselves into small searching threads that hold the bank together. Beneath the palms and reeds, An unseen network follows the wadi's hidden wetness, making the landscape more bound, more stable, and more alive. At the margin of the pool where those roots meet silt, the water is almost certainly busy in ways too small to hear. Microorganisms soften fallen leaves, insects shelter among stems, and fine particles gather in gentle layers each time the current slows. This borderland is humble, yet it is one of the richest parts of the pool, because edges often hold the greatest exchange. The deeper center of the pool has a different character, quieter, darker, and more open. There, the bottom may drop into a smooth bowl, and the water may hold a slightly cooler temperature where the sun reaches less directly. Fish may rest near that depth when the day is bright, while at night the whole basin becomes part of their dim, protected home. A small ripple touches the edge and laps against stone with a sound so faint it is almost imagined. It does not repeat immediately, and that irregularity lets the silence spread wide again. You wait without waiting, simply resting near the water as the wadi continues to make its small sounds according to its own timing. There is no clock in the canyon except the slow turning of sky and the gradual settling of cool air. Time is measured by the softening of stone, the lowering of water through dry weeks, the return of pools after mountain rain, and the nightly arrival of shadow. In such a place, time feels less like a line and more like a broad, gentle cycle. You may sense that cycle in your body, not as thought, but as a loosening toward rest. The breath comes in, the breath leaves, warmth gathers, warmth fades, attention rises, attention settles, and each movement has room around it. The pool offers the same pattern in another form, receiving drops, releasing ripples, reflecting light, and returning to calm. Farther downstream, the wadi floor may widen into a quieter reach, where stones spread out under a larger sky. There, the pools may become shallower and more scattered, held in hollows between gravel bars and smooth bedrock shelves. Even when the canyon opens, the memory of the narrow pools remains in the water, and the flow continues with the same patience. Upstream, by contrast, the walls may draw together, and the water may pass through a narrow corridor of polished stone. The pool in such a corridor would feel secret in daylight and almost dreamlike in darkness, its surface tucked beneath high walls that hold the cool long after sunrise. You can imagine it now as another dark mirror beyond the bend, waiting without any need to be found. The wadi is full of such waiting places. Some are shaded ledges where a plant can hold moisture, some are gravel pockets where water slows below the surface, and some are deep basins where reflections gather. Each waiting place is shaped by the same gentle forces, yet each has a character of its own, a small inward quiet. A line of mineral stain descending from the wall may show where water has traveled after rain, leaving behind a pale trace when it dries. Another stain may be darker, carrying organic matter from leaves and roots, or warmer in color where iron-rich minerals have touched the stone. In daylight, these lines look like delicate vertical memories. At night, they rest unseen inside the canyon's shadow. The unseen details are still present, and there is comfort in knowing that darkness does not remove them. It only asks the mind to release its hold for a while, trusting that stone, water, and root continue in their places. The wadi's calm grows deeper when you stop needing to verify every shape and allow the hidden to remain hidden. Somewhere in the pool, a fish turns again, and the surface receives the movement as a widening ring. The ring catches one star, bends it into a small arc, then lets it gather back into a point. This simple motion feels complete because it begins, expands, and fades into stillness without leaving any sharp edge behind. The same can happen with a thought, especially here, where the landscape gives every thought room to widen and dissolve. Nothing has to be pushed away because the wadi's quiet is large enough to contain it. A memory, a worry, a stray image, or a half-formed plan can touch the mind's surface and then drift outward into rest. The pool's darkness has a soft density now, like water held in a stone bowl under a sky that has forgotten the sun. It does not feel empty, because you know its bottom holds smooth pebbles, pale sediment, and the hidden movements of fish. Darkness simply gathers these things into one calm presence, giving the pool the depth of sleep. In sleep, too, the mind gathers many small things into a single quiet. The day's brightness, the body's sensations, the voices of memory, and the places you have imagined all become less separate as rest deepens. The wadi beside you offers an image for that gathering, a basin where everything settles slowly without losing its meaning. A soft line of air moves again across the pool, and the water answers before the reeds do. The reflection loosens, then the reeds shift lightly, and only afterward does the breeze touch your skin, as if the pool knew first what was arriving. This sequence is slow enough to be soothing, and it makes the night feel gently ordered. Order in the wadi is never rigid. It is an order of tendencies, of water seeking low places, plants seeking moisture, stones settling by weight, and shade moving according to the angle of sun and wall. Such order feels peaceful because it does not require control, only the continued presence of natural relationships over time. You can feel those relationships in the way the pool fits the basin exactly, not by design, but by yielding. Water takes the shape it is given, yet in taking it, it also changes the stone that holds it. The basin shapes the pool shapes the basin, and together they make a quiet form of belonging. Belonging in a landscape like this is not loud or permanent. A floating leaf belongs while it drifts, a fish belongs while it hides in shade, a root belongs while it follows moisture, and you belong while you rest beside the water. The wadi holds each presence lightly, allowing it to arrive, remain for a while, and pass. The night continues without needing to be divided into parts. There is only deeper coolness, quieter sound, and the gradual inward movement of attention. The canyon walls, though mostly unseen, seem to lean around the pool in the imagination, making the world outside feel gently distant and dim. At times, the trickle becomes so quiet that you wonder whether it has faded, but then it returns in the same delicate thread. Perhaps a small leaf has shifted near the inlet, or a tiny obstruction has changed the way water passes over stone. Even the smallest arrangement can alter a sound, and the wadi's music is made from such modest changes. The inlet itself is a place of renewal, where the pool receives water that has touched upstream shade and stone. It carries a little oxygen, perhaps a little suspended sediment, perhaps the faint chemistry of minerals dissolved along the way. As it enters, it spreads into the basin, becoming less a line and more a shared coolness. The outlet, if you can imagine it in the dark, is just as gentle because water leaves without emptying the pool all at once. It slips over a shallow lip, through stones, or beneath gravel, continuing the descent towards another basin lower in the channel. In this way, the pool is always both holding and releasing, a balance that feels very close to breathing. Your own breathing may be almost inaudible now, but it is part of the soundscape, softened by the canyon around you. It mingles with the water's murmur, the faint reed movement, and the broad silence between stars. Nothing here asks you to breathe in any particular way. The place simply makes a slower breath feel natural. Above, the stars are sharp in the dry mountain air, but the pool makes them tender. Each reflected point is softened by water, widened by minute ripples, and darkened by the depth beneath it. This transformation is one of the pool's quiet gifts, taking the distant brightness of the sky and bringing it close enough to touch. You can imagine reaching toward that reflected star, not to disturb it, but to feel the cool skin of the water around it. Your fingers would enter darkness, and the light would scatter, turning one trembling point into a loose shimmer before the surface healed. The star itself would remain high above, untouched, while its reflection would become part of the pool's memory. So much of the wadi is made of reflections that cannot be kept. The morning wall in bright water, the evening palm at the edge, the passing bird, the night star, and your own quiet outline all appear briefly. The pool does not keep them by holding them still, it keeps them by receiving them fully while they are. This is a gentle way to think of attention before sleep. You do not need to hold every image tightly, because it is enough to receive it and let it pass. The wadi teaches this without teaching. Through every ripple that takes a reflection, changes it, and returns the surface to peace. The rocks below the surface are doing their own quiet work, even as they rest. Algae may coat parts of them in thin green films. Mineral grains may lodge in small roughnesses, and tiny organisms may move across their surfaces in the dark. By day, these stones form the visible floor of the pool. By night, they become a hidden foundation. Foundations can be calming because they do not need to announce themselves. The bedrock holds the basin holds the water holds the reflections, and the reflections hold a softened image of the sky. Layer rests on layer, and each layer offers its steadiness to the next with no need for recognition. The wadi's larger foundation lies in the mountains, whose lifted rocks create the slopes, fractures, and channels that guide water into pools. Some formations resist erosion more strongly, making ledges and narrow passages, while softer or more fractured places yield into basins and smoother corridors. The landscape's beauty comes partly from these differences, from the varied ways rock answers water. You do not have to name each rock to feel the age around you. The walls themselves communicate it through height, weight, and the quiet evidence of long exposure. A single polished curve near the pool may carry enough time to calm the mind, because it could only have been made through repetition beyond counting. Counting belongs less and less to this hour. The number of stars, the number of drops, the number of years held in the stone all become too wide or too delicate to matter directly. What remains is the felt sense of abundance, without noise, of time without pressure, of water without hurry. The dry scent of the canyon floor rises faintly whenever the air shifts. It mingles with the damp mineral smell at the pool's edge, making a fragrance that belongs neither entirely to desert nor stream. It is the scent of a meeting place, and the wadi itself is exactly that, a meeting between dryness and flow. In that meeting, contrast becomes harmony. The dry stone makes the water more luminous, the water makes the stone more gentle, and the shade makes both more intimate. You can feel this harmony in the way the pool rests in its basin, as if the land has made a hollow for quietness. Somewhere beyond sight, a small nocturnal creature may pause near another pool, lowering its head to drink from the dark surface. Its movement would be soft, its reflection brief, and the pool would accept it without alarm. The wadi's nightlife is often like this, made of gentle visits, faint traces, and movements that pass through silence. By morning, the pool might show a faint mark in the mud, a small track near the reed roots, or nothing visible at all. Many presences leave no lasting sign, and still they belong to the landscape's living pattern. The wadi does not need a full record to be complete. It carries life through repetition, relationship, and return. The word return seems to fit everything here. Water returns after rain, coolness returns after sunset, reflections return when ripples fade, and calm returns after each small disturbance. Even attention returns again and again to the pool, because the pool is the quiet center of this night. You can rest at that center without trying to reach the end of anything. The wadi has no final statement, only continuing forms of presence. The water continues downward, the stone continues weathering, the plants continue rooting, and the night continues lowering its soft blue-black weight over everything. That weight is not heavy in an oppressive way, but like a blanket of cool air and shadow laid across the canyon. It smooths the brightness from the rock, quiets the contrasts, and lets the pools become dark windows into the earth's deeper calm. Beneath it, your own body may feel more supported, more willing to release the last lifted edges of wakefulness. The channel below the pool curves away through stones that have almost vanished from sight. You can still sense their rounded shapes, because your memory of daylight fills in what night has softened. The mind does this gently now, not with effort, but with a dreamy continuity that lets the wadi extend beyond the visible edge. If you followed the channel in imagination, you would find another shallow run where water glides over rock in a thin sheet. It would shine faintly under the stars, then slip into a deeper hollow where the sound lowers and becomes rounder. Each transition would be gradual, because the wadi prefers thresholds to sudden changes, soft passages rather than abrupt turns. A smooth chute of stone may connect two basins, polished by seasonal flow until it holds a pale sheen even in shadow. During fuller water, that chute would guide a clear ribbon between the pools, and during dry periods, it would remain as a memory of movement. Now, in the night, You can imagine your thoughts sliding down it slowly, following the old direction of water. The next basin might be sheltered by an overhang, where the stone leans forward and keeps the water cool through much of the day. The pool there would be dark early, even before sunset, and perhaps small plants would gather along the damp back wall. Such places feel like the wadi's inner rooms, carved not for shelter in any human sense, but for stillness. Stillness does not mean the absence of flow. It means flow has become quiet enough to be felt as rest, and change has slowed enough to become a kind of belonging. In the wadi pools, stillness includes trickles, fish, roots, sediment, insects, and the invisible movement of groundwater through stone. You can let that wider meaning settle into you. Rest does not require perfect silence, perfect darkness, or perfect emptiness. It can hold small sounds, half-seen shapes, and slow inner movement, just as the pool holds leaves, stars, fish, and depth without losing its calm. The dark surface near you looks almost motionless again. Only at the inlet does the water carry a faint line of texture, a subtle brightening where movement catches what little light remains. The rest of the basin lies smooth and deep, inviting the mind to stop at the surface, then slowly drift beneath thought. Beneath thought, there is the body, and beneath the body, the steady support of stone. The wadi makes this layering easy to feel, because its own layers are so present and so calm. Sky over canyon, canyon over pool, pool over sediment, sediment over bedrock, and bedrock over the deeper earth all become one restful order. You do not need to descend through those layers with effort. You can simply allow awareness to settle, like a grain falling through clear water when the current has gone quiet. It turns once, catches the faintest light, and then comes to rest among other grains on the soft floor. The pool's floor is not visible now, yet you can imagine it with unusual tenderness. Pale sand gathered in low places, small stones arranged by former currents, fallen leaves darkening where they have begun to soften, and perhaps a tiny shell or fragment carried from some earlier flow. The unseen bottom feels peaceful, because it is where movement finally becomes rest. Rest at the bottom of a wadi pool is not an ending, because sediment can be lifted again when water returns with greater energy. A quiet layer today may become a drifting cloud in a future current, then settle in another hollow farther downstream. Even rest has its cycles here, and the thought of that cycle feels soft rather than restless. The night allows such thoughts to come slowly and leave slowly. There is space between them, a wide inner space like the canyon's dark air. The pool remains present at the edge of awareness, not demanding attention, but offering a stable place to return whenever the mind drifts too far. Perhaps the moon is still below the ridge, or perhaps the canyon walls keep it hidden. The sky above remains mostly star-dark, and the pool below remains a darker echo of that sky. Without moonlight, the wadi's details withdraw into suggestion, and suggestion is enough for this hour of sleepiness. Moonlight, when it arrives, would not disturb the calm. It would only change the color of the silence. The stone would become pale, the water would hold a silver path, and the reeds would cast longer shadows across the surface. Yet even that imagined brightness feels soft, because the wadi receives light gently, never with sharpness. For now, the darkness remains complete enough to quiet the eyes. You can let them rest closed again, and the pool continues inside you as sound, coolness, and memory. The trickle becomes a thread through the mind, drawing you not outward, but inward, toward a deeper and more restful shade. With your eyes closed, the wadi becomes almost entirely sensation. The firmness of stone, the nearness of water, the cool drift of air, and the faint scent of damp mineral create a landscape without edges. It is still Oman's Wadi, still held by mountains and carved by seasonal flow, but now it is also a calm place of feeling. The science of it remains, though softly. You know that water has shaped the basin, that temperature changes move through rock and air, that plants gather where moisture lingers, and that life concentrates along the pool's delicate margins. These facts do not wake the mind, they settle it, because they show the quiet order beneath beauty. Beauty here is not decoration, but relationship made visible. Clear water in a carved basin, Reeds in damp silt, stars in a dark surface, stone polished by flow, and palms rooted near a hidden supply all form one complete arrangement. The wadi is beautiful because everything is met in the right kind of slowness. The right kind of slowness is difficult to notice in a hurried mood, but tonight it surrounds you so thoroughly that you can enter it without effort. The pool changes slowly, the air cools slowly, the stars move slowly, and your own thoughts begin to lengthen into the same gentle current. Nothing snaps, nothing startles, and nothing asks for attention with a raised voice. A drop falls again after a long quiet interval, and its sound is softer than memory. It touches the pool, sends out rings, and becomes indistinguishable from the water that received it. This is how the night gathers small events, taking each one into itself, until the whole canyon feels continuous and whole. The rings from that drop must be crossing the surface now, though you may no longer be looking. They widen over reflected darkness, pass near the reeds, touch the stone edge, and disappear without any need to be followed. Their motion is enough to continue the wadi's gentle pattern, and your own awareness can fade with them into stillness. Stillness, now, is not something outside you. It has moved through the cool air, through the hand resting near stone, through the breath, and into the quieter rooms of the mind. The pool remains beside you, but it also becomes a kind of inner water, dark, calm, and patient beneath the last moving thoughts. The mountains hold the wadi in their old embrace. Their slopes, unseen in the night, are part of every drop that reaches the pools, every stone that rests in the channel, every cool current that slides through the valley after sunset. Even hidden, they give the pools their context, their mineral taste, their depth of time. You can imagine the ridges at dawn only faintly now, because sleep has made the image soft. The first light will come eventually, touching high rock before it finds the water, and the pool will brighten by degrees in the basin. But that future morning is far away from this present darkness, and the wadi asks nothing from it yet, only waiting. Waiting is one of the landscape's most peaceful qualities. The stones wait without impatience, the pools wait between rains, the roots wait in shaded cracks, and the hidden water waits beneath gravel until the land opens. You can wait in the same manner, not for anything specific, but as a form of resting presence. The pool has become nearly soundless except for the faint inlet, and even that seems woven into the fabric of the night. It no longer feels like a separate sound, but like a soft seam running through the silence. Along that seam, attention can loosen thread by thread, until wakefulness itself begins to unravel. There is no urgency in that unraveling. Each thread releases in its own time, like sediment settling at different speeds through clear water. Some thoughts fall quickly and disappear, while others turn slowly in the dimness before finding a place among the quiet layers below. The wadi receives them all without choosing. It has received stones, leaves, rain, heat, dust, stars, and silence across more evenings than anyone could hold in memory. To rest beside it is to be received in the same gentle way as one more temporary presence at the edge of water. You are not outside the story of the wadi now. For this hour, your breath, your warmth, and your listening are part of the canyon's night, just as a ripple is part of the pool while it lasts. Then the ripple fades and the pool remains, not empty, but calm enough to receive the next soft arrival. The darkness deepens into a kind of blue you can feel more than see. It rests against the stone, across the surface, beneath the reeds, and around the palms that stand quietly beside the channel. The entire wadi seems wrapped in one continuous shade, with the pool as its darkest and most tender center. At that center, water holds the quietest version of the landscape. The high walls have become dim shapes, the palms have become silhouettes, the stars have become trembling points, and the floor below has become a soft, unseen promise. Everything is reduced to essence, and the essence is peaceful, mineral, cool, and deep. A final awareness of the day's heat may pass through you, then dissolve into the present coolness. You remember sunlight on stone, bright water in the pool, dragonflies over reeds, and the clear green edge where fish held themselves in the current. Those images fade not by being forgotten, but by becoming part of the night's dream. The dream is still made from the wadi. It has the same stone walls, the same pools, the same hidden groundwater, the same quiet life gathered at the margins. But now everything moves more slowly, as if the whole landscape has lowered its voice and drawn closer around your rest. And somewhere beyond the edge of hearing, water continues its descent through the valley, passing from basin to basin with no need to hurry. It moves under stars, under palms, under the cooling breath of the mountains, and beneath the ancient shapes carved by its own returning flow. The wadi carries it gently, and the night carries you gently, and both descents become one silence.